The Bible and ancient texts don't just mention giants once. They describe entire bloodlines of them. From the Watchers in the Book of Jubilees to Goliath of Gath, these beings shaped history, terrified nations, and may still echo in the world today. Let's trace their story. Our story begins with the Watchers. These were angels who descended from heaven and took human wives, an event briefly recounted in Genesis 6. This union resulted in unnatural offspring that would plague the earth. The Book of Jubilees lays out the foundational corruption clearly. Quote, Jubilees 7:21. For owing to the fornication wherein the Watchers took themselves wives. This illicit union is what catalyzed the arrival of the giants. Type 1. The giants, Nephilim. The very first generation of offspring were the massive giants, often identified as the Nephilim. Tradition holds that these creatures stood anywhere from 13 to 36 feet tall. Jubilees 7:22 states, they begat sons, the Nephilim, and they were all unlike. These first-generation beings were known for initiating the cycle of destruction by shedding blood. Type 2. The Nephil. The second generation of giants were known as the Nephil. While still far beyond standard human scale, they were notably smaller than their fathers, measuring approximately 7 to 13 feet tall. However, the violence inherent in their lineage quickly turned inward. Jubilees recounts their tragic fate, and the giants slew the Nephil. The second generation was thus caught in the intense violence perpetrated by their own gigantic fathers. Type 3. The Eljo, Eliud. The third generation brings us to the Eljo, or the Eliud. These beings were much closer to human size, typically measuring between 6 and 7 feet tall. The chain of internal violence continued down the generations, and the Nephil slew the Eljo, and the Eljo mankind. It is important to note that the scale of the Eliud begins to look familiar when we consider later historical accounts of human giants and towering warriors, sometimes reported between 7 and 9 feet tall. The flood, God's judgment. The proliferation of these corrupted bloodlines led directly to divine judgment. Jubilees 7:24-25 explains that God sent the flood because the world had become saturated with corruption from these beings. Specifically, the text notes, they sinned against the beasts. Every imagination was evil continually. The wickedness and unnatural acts necessitated a complete renewal of the earth. Giants after the flood, the return. But the story does not end with the flood. Genesis 6:4 explicitly mentions there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. New lines of giants appear post-flood, suggesting that the corrupted influence persisted. We see references to the Anakim, mentioned in Numbers 13:33, the Rephaim, referenced in Deuteronomy 2:11, and figures like Og of Bashan, whose enormous size is highlighted in Deuteronomy 3:11, noting his bed was 13 feet long, Goliath of Gath. Perhaps the most famous giant remnant is Goliath of Gath, documented in 1 Samuel 17. Goliath was measured at 6 cubits and a span, which translates to approximately 9 to 10 feet tall. He is directly connected to the Anakim and Rephaim lineage, serving as a powerful remnant of these ancient giants. Goliath's ultimate defeat, however, highlights a crucial theological point. It demonstrates God's power and sovereignty over what remained of these corrupted bloodlines. Beyond the ancient biblical texts, the idea of giants echoes throughout history. Medieval and pre-medieval reports often speak of giants. We find legends of giants in the Norse sagas and stories across African, Native American, and Celtic traditions. There are also historical claims of finding giant skeletons, though most of these remain unverified. We might suggest that these global accounts represent cultural echoes of the Eliud and the later giant remnants that survived antiquity. Today, very tall individuals still exist. For instance, Robert Wadlow reached a height of 8 feet 11 inches. Science explains these cases as gigantism, a medical anomaly. However, the ancient texts offer a different narrative, suggesting that some extremely tall people may potentially descend from these corrupted bloodlines stemming from the Watchers' rebellion. This leaves us with a compelling mystery to consider. Are modern giants merely medical anomalies, or are they faint, lingering traces of the Watchers' ancient rebellion? Let's recap the lineage described in Jubilees. First, the Nephilim, giants. Second, the Nephil. Third, the Eljo, or Eliud. And then, the post-flood giants, the Anakim, the Rephaim, and Goliath. From Jubilees to Goliath, giants remind us of the cost of rebellion against God. Whether symbolic or physical, they stand as warnings and mysteries, still haunting us today.